Hello, QST readers worldwide. I'm Dave Kassler, amateur radio call sign KE0OG, and I write the Ask Dave column in QST. With every Ask Dave column, there is a supplemental video, and this is the supplemental video for the November issue of Ask Dave in November 2023. And we're going to be talking about the first question, which has to do with how to make do with 160-meter antennas and accomplish great things even without a perfect antenna. Let's turn to some charts. First of all, there is a figure 1 here. The highlighted word is antenna. In the print edition, the highlighted word said ground. Antenna is correct and appears in the online edition. Now, under the heading of just because it's hard doesn't mean it can't be done, in my column I said that a low dipole, such as one set up for NVIS, meaning much less than a half wavelength high, mostly transmits straight up, and it's good for close-in contacts. This method of making contacts is called NVIS, for near vertical incidence skywave propagation. Randy Leedy, WS4C, wrote to me about his experience with a 160-meter horizontal dipole that was nowhere near the optimal height of a half wavelength. He says the top of it is about 50 feet in the air. He says he completed his 160-meter DXCC over a number of years with lots of patience. He prefers CW and even QRP. Just as a reference, let's take a look at a 160-meter vertical. First of all, understand how tall this is. A quarter wavelength would be 40 meters, which is, let's see, 132 feet about, so it'd be a really tall antenna. And it would give a nice 33-degree elevation angle, which is good for DX. Now let's look at a dipole at a half wavelength height. Note here that in this simulation on EasyNEC, it gives a nice 30-degree elevation, great for DX, but the dipole is now 80 meters high, or about 250 feet. It's a half wavelength off the ground, 250 feet. Those are really tall poles to hold that thing in the air. So, what happens? Well, if you go to a quarter wavelength high, about 125 feet, you shoot straight up. Now, at an eighth of a lambda high, it's about 62.5 feet up, which is still really high. Now, note here, I want you to note the beam width. The beam width of an antenna is defined as the degrees between the 3 dB down points. And it's given down at the bottom, and the beam width is 97.8 degrees. It's really wide. So although it shoots straight up, it shoots a lot to the side too. Now let's get this height at WS4C. He's at 50 feet. I want to take a look at something that's very interesting. Yes, the bandwidth is now 95.6 degrees, pointed straight up. But if instead of going down just 3 dB, which is the official definition of the beam width of an antenna, if he goes down to 6 dB, it's radiating at 27 degrees. So his antenna will be heard by the opposite station 1 S unit down from the optimal amount of radiation, okay? If you want to go for 2 S units down, which is 12 dB, he's radiating at 14 degrees. Now, what this makes out of this is a compromise antenna, okay? Most of the radiation is going kind of up, but if you are willing to give up an S unit, you can drop that down to 27 degrees, which is lower than the full height will give. One way that you can add 6 dB to the antenna, it's doubling the power twice, 400 watt amplifier. 2 S units down would be an 800 watt amplifier, or just accepting that it's going to be 2 S units down So if normally the guy at the other end would hear you at S8, he will actually hear you at S6. Is that a good enough signal? You know what? In a lot of circumstances, it is. So what's the moral of this story? WS4C's compromised antenna does not keep him from persevering. Put up whatever antenna you can and persist. Always look for ways to improve your skills, and I might add from his example, CW, anyone? Now, as you know, one of my favorite words is persevere, so I looked it up in Roget's International Thesaurus, the third edition, the 15th printing in 1967, which, by the way, was when I was in high school. And look at all the words that go with perseverance: persistence, steadiness, constancy, tenacity, doggedness, and enduringly, diligently, steadfastly, tirelessly, and above all, patiently. There you have it. A little bit of a reminder that as amateurs, we're not looking to have communications in the worst case, but rather the best case. He has an antenna that, although generally considered not optimum, will put out a signal that, while it's a compromise, it's anywhere from 1 to 2 S units down, can still work just fine. He can recover those S units if he wants with an amplifier, although an amplifier will not help him hear better. On 160 meters, normally that's done with a beverage antenna, but beverage antennas are very large, take a few acres to put up, and are extremely directional, so you need to have multiple of them if you want to cover different DX directions. I very much commend him for his persistence with this antenna, which would normally be considered an NVIS antenna. So there you have it. My favorite word, persist. Keep going, keep trying, ask people around you, get everything you can, and read the league publications. There's some great stuff in there. So until we next meet, 73.